Welcome back to the Lanterne Rouge Cycling Podcast. It's been less than 24 hours since our last one after the Tour de France all finished. And this is our Men's World Championships road race preview. Now, you might be wondering why we're doing a separate men's preview. Well, because of the World Championships being before the La Vuelta, rather than being in September, they're in the start of August. The scheduling is it's got me all confused. So I'll illuminate myself and you whilst I and read out what the plan is. So the men's road race is this Sunday, the 6th of August. And the men's junior and women's juniors is the day before. The TTs are during the week. The women's TT is on the 10th, which is a Wednesday, I think. And then the men's TT is on the Thursday. So they're not on the same day anymore. They're on separate days during next week. So 10 days from now, 11 days from now. And then the women's road race, elite road race, is Sunday week, nearly 2 weeks from now, on the 13th. And this is because I presume they're staggering the women's so it doesn't finish so close after the Tour de France Flamme avec Zwift. Plus also, what's this Super World Champ stuff, Benji?
So basically, you've got multiple disciplines there. Road cycling is the superior, the one that matters in our heart, but next to that, mountain bike. Next to that, mountain bike supposedly exists. Track is something that supposedly exists. Never heard of it. But those other disciplines are also done in the Super World Championships. And in other years, that was a separate event in the year. So Glasgow wanted to organize it all at once. And they're doing that in the next couple of weeks. The next, I think 13 days from the 3rd of August, if I recall correctly. So it's going to be a banger of a 2 weeks when it comes to cycling. So that should be fun for us. But it's also a bit confusing that the women's road race is a week later, like you said, than the men's road race and so forth. But we'll make our way through. We'll manage. And the thing with this race as well is it's kind of a memory for me to the European Championships of 2018. We'll go into that a bit more once we take a look at the parkour. But how about we discuss the 2022 edition for a second here, the one in your home place? Well,
I'm not from Wollongong. Yeah, I mean, I look back at it, I got to say, it pains me to say it wasn't the most memorable World Championships, if we're frank. Remco soloed away. The parkour was in a suburban Wollongong suburb, and the main defining climb was just a random 1K episode. Like, it wasn't the Quarmont, was it? So
it was pretty pleasant, though.
For Belgian fans, sure, yeah. You basically, you've not vindicated, avenged, or Sven van Thornhout was able to, after the Leuven shambles, they got Remco the W. So yeah, Remco won the men's road race. We'll talk about what happened in the women's road race before the women's road race. Preview the TT Foss one. Yeah, it was a bit strange. Jet lag, all that stuff. So the jet lag and shouldn't really be a factor, I think. Although I know Jorgensen's gone back to Idaho, and I think he's on the start list for Sunday, so he's doing a lot of travel. But yeah, it's. Oh, yeah, and the hotel incident. That was kind of the most memorable thing, right?
I sincerely hope that Van der Poel is sleeping on a separate hotel room floor this time around. Yes, I stole that joke from my wife, who made it earlier today. But anyway, when it comes to this hotel incident...
News breaking out. Mathieu Van der Poel walking back. He's gone for a cheeky Nando's. He's not in his hotel room. He's gone out of his hotel room. Big mistake. He's gone to get a cheeky Nando's at 11 o'clock. He looks around. He sees a guy, and he's just saying, choose life. Choose a job. Choose a career. There are no reasons. Fuck the skag. No heroin. That's he just sees Jude. That's not Jude Law, but he sees Jude Law from Train Spotting just bearing down upon him, and he fights him off, but he gets arrested again. I hope that doesn't happen.
I hope that doesn't happen.
In all seriousness, do you reckon a serious conversation has been had between Van der Poel, his partner, the Dutch Federation, and maybe even the Roothofts about sleeping arrangements and avoiding that situation again this year?
I think so. I also think that Jude Law is not necessarily a child, so it wouldn't look as bad to the public.
if he bashed a junkie.
Okay, we're going to skip this conversation. I think we're going off the rails.
Listen, Trainspotting is actually set in Edinburgh, to be clear, but I think it was mainly filmed in Glasgow. But anyway.
Mate, this race starts in Edinburgh.
Oh, fuck, it does. But the city circuit. Does that mean they're staying in Edinburgh? Because they'll be doing the recon of the city circuit in Glasgow. Anyway, the parkour. we've done a nice preview for the poor city. As Benji said, it's this is the side of the 2018 European Championships, which Trentin won, 271 kilometers long, with LFR says 2,800 meters altitude gain, but maybe the official profile says a little bit more, 3,500. I don't know who to believe. And there's a 120 Ks, 3-hour run-in where there are 2 climbs, Crow Road. So they go from Edinburgh, where they start, go north, then cross over the Queen's Ferry crossing or near there, and then they do 2 climbs, but I don't think the climbs will be decisive. The break will still be formed. There's like 4 hours left in the race.
Mm-hmm.
This city circuit, Benji, it is really hard. I think this is a really attritional circuit.
I think so as well, and even like the kilometers that come beforehand, it's not the craziest first 120 kilometers, but that climb in there, the Crow Road climb, it's a bit of attrition for riders, and it might offer an opportunity for a break to form, or if a break already has formed, that might still be an option for people to anticipate the circuit that comes after that climb. And you said it, 9.5 laps of the circuit. It's technical, it's punchy, and we'll go into how technical and punchy it is in a second, but it's also, I think, very tactical. As in, it wouldn't surprise me if this World Championships is won by group dynamics. As in, a group goes ahead with 5 or 6 countries that are happy that they've got a rider in it, and then the other teams, maybe a Britain isn't in there, for example, and they have to chase the entire time and they don't make it. And then the first group can fight for the victory. If like a situation like last year in Wollongong is similar to that, and I feel like that's a very solid option here. But anyway, how punchy and how technical is this circuit?
Oh, it's just corner after corner after corner after corner, and just in each lap there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 at least punchy climbs, all about 30 seconds to 1 minute long. You know, they're about 5% to 6%. The Montrose Street climbs 200 meters, 6%. That's a shorter one. It's just hard, and 272 kilometers long. Those climbs are going to feel a lot longer when you're into the 8th and 9th lap, and you've got people attacking all over the place. You've got no teammates. I think it's actually this sawtooth circuit with all the corners. It's going to be difficult to control. If there's rain, and I'm looking at the long-range weather forecast from the Met Office, which did, I think, correctly predict, thanks for the rain in Manchester last week, boyos, Ashes retained, see you later. It did predict, it's predicting 40% chance of rain on Sunday, cool temperatures, 17 degrees at 1 o'clock, 16 degrees at 4 o'clock. But 40% chance of showers. So if it does rain, it makes it even more chaotic. And just, 9 laps of this circuit, and as I said, you think, it doesn't look that hard. It's just going to be, could just be a sprint. I don't see it. But that's also defined by how teams ride the race as well. But it could have lots of exciting racing. It could, if it rains, Benji, be a bit too much carnage and a bit too much of a luck factor.
Yeah.
In a city circuit like that, what did the Slovenians say when they did a recon?
I don't know, man.
I think they said some of the roads are really bad, but to be honest, I think they meant that in the north when they're coming from Edinburgh. So, I mean, it's not ideal, but also I don't think the race is going to be decided from Edinburgh to Crow Road. To be honest, they're going to be riding it like. The roads might be bad, but you'll have time to change your bike.
Certainly, you said it, like, it's not going to be decided in the first phase. It's going to be breakaway formation phase. Some riders trying to get in a breakaway. Then maybe on Crow Road, you will see some kind of action of someone trying to anticipate what comes afterwards. But I would expect the majority of the action to come on the actual circuit. And the decisive moves will be on the circuit as well. Maybe with like 50 kilometers to go, roughly. That's what we saw in the 2018 European Championships. In that race, we saw a group form with Trentin, Mathieu van der Poel, Van Aert, and 7 other riders, including the likes of Nico Denz and so forth, ahead in the road with 48-ish kilometers to go on this circuit. So it might be a slightly different circuit, but it's definitely a similar type of circuit, in Glasgow. So that does show that a group ahead has a solid chance of making it in this race if the majority of big countries behind are happy with who's in that group ahead. So I'm looking forward to that. You said it. When we looked at the actual corners in the parkour, roughly 15 corners, of which 90% is probably technical. So that's really rough. And when I then think what riders fit this parkour, I kind of feel like it fits the riders, the real racers, the classics riders, maybe even the cyclocross riders, with the amount of punchy, repetitive punchiness that they need to do and getting out of corners, speeding up again, stuff like that. It's basically a big CX parkour to me.
I know, a technical city circuit like that, and then you add in rain. And like Van der Poel, like if you remember, okay, it's not Roubaix with the cobbles, but if you remember the wet Roubaix, Van der Poel was taking like a second per corner on people. Yep. He's like so good in the wet conditions, and I think in a technical city circuit, like Luke will know because it's like one of the biggest Dutch races when he won Limburg in. Is that a Dutch race?
Yeah, it is.
Okay. In like 2016, man, he's just so good on these sort of circuits, and we'll have to get Luke's tactics also. He'll put it in the chat for us of what if he's the Netherlands coach, how they should ride, and who he's picking. Because he's their DS for a day. But the betting odds, Benji. This is what the bookies are saying. Wout van Aert, the favourite, narrowly, ahead of Evenepoel. Not much in it, basically equal favourites with the three favourites essentially. Yeah, Van Aert, Evenepoel, and Van der Poel, $6.50, $7, and $7 respectively. Not much splitting between them. Obviously, two Belgians, one Dutchman. Then Philipsen, the third Belgian, is fourth favourite on $9. Then Pedersen, $9. He's shortened since his week 3.
Yeah.
Pogacar, not confirmed to be starting, but I reckon he will, especially if there's rain about. $11. Laporte, 7th. $21. Asgreen, after the beautiful third week of the Tour, is into the top 10 favourites on 23. Koy, another Dutch rider. We haven't got to Van Baarle yet. Have we? No. Is on $34. Alaphilippe, $41. Healy, $41. Ganna, $41. Don't see that at all. Van Baarle, I guess he was pretty good in Wallonie. I must take that. Maybe that's that. But yeah.
His focus might be on the track and not necessarily on the road race. And that is something we need to keep in mind with some of these riders who will be riding the mountain bike, maybe, who will be riding the road race. I don't know if Van der Poel is riding the mountain bike. I would guess yes. But for example, I think Pidcock is riding mountain bike and is not showing up here, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, and his teammate Van der Poel, Van Baarle, is there on $41. They're really the everyone below 50. And as you mentioned, Benji, Pidcock, where would he be in these odds? In good shape? I dare say in the top 5 favourites. It's actually, I mean, we'll speak about the British team, but maybe it's the scheduling, the way the mountain bike is, I think, before the men's road. No, the mountain bike's after the men's road race. So if the men's road race was the final denouement of the Super World Championships and he could do his mountain bike first and then do the men's road race, I think he'd do the road race. But it is very surprising to me, and it's Ineos' decision, and they don't just pay their riders for road performance, that's clear. The sponsors don't either. But it's very surprising to me we have a 15 corner per lap, 50 corner per lap technical city circuit with punchy climbs in Britain, and he's on Ineos and he's not doing it. Actually very surprised by it. Would he be the favourite? No, but I mean, he beat Van Aert in Amstel and Brabants. Like he was pretty good in the Tour de France before he ran out of gas. Obviously the mountain bike is higher priority than the road race. Also, he has a much higher percentage chance of winning the mountain bike.
Yeah.
You know, okay, he has 5% to 10% chance to win the road race. It's probably 50% in the mountain bike. I don't know. Still surprising to me and probably disappointing for British fans.
I think so as well. Now, there's a lot of good riders still on the list. You named a lot of them. And if we take a look at the start list for a second, because you mentioned Belgium as a first, second, and fourth favorite with the riders they have. And they've got a team at the start with the following riders. You said them, Remco Evenepoel, Van Aert, and Philipsen as the 3 leaders. But next to that, they have Tige Benoot, who was arguably pretty strong in the second and third week at the Tour de France. Towards the end of the race, he really was coming through a bit more than in the first week, because I recall he was ill or something in the first week. Nathan van Hooydonk, who was fucking strong for the last 2 weeks, as well as San Sebastian. Then Jasper Stuyven, who will be in a domestique role this time, is how it was said on the press conference. Then Yves Lampaert, Frédéric Frison, and Victor Kampenaerts, 2 riders from Lotto, which I actually like because Kampenaerts was on point at Tour de France and Frison is kind of like, he's really delivered throughout the year, and he's going to be that de Klerk role in my head. What do you think?
Yeah, he's better than de Klerk this year, that's clear. Like, 4th in Brugge de Panne, 4th in Gent-Wevelgem. You don't get those results by luck. So he's been very, very strong. And also, you got to remember, Gent-Wevelgem's 261 kilometers long. Like, that's actually a long race, monument level length race. That was also in dog shit conditions from memory. So if it's raining on the weekend, I think Frison will be, that's the sort of guy you want to do the dirty work. Not saying de Klerk couldn't do it, but Frison probably deserves that. And how old is he? 31. He's just improving, just improving with age. Anyway, no delay, Benji. Is that a case of just, why would you take a rider who's a worse, not saying he's a bad rider, but a worse version of Philipsen right now?
I think it's a combination of that, plus not wanting too many cooks in the kitchen, plus next to that, the factor that you had his injury running into the Belgian Championships. He fell pretty hard in the run-up to that. Eventually, he arrived at the Belgian Championships. He rode Wallonia, I think, where he was, I think he won one stage, but he wasn't the super impressive Delhi we saw in February, for example, yet. So I think he's just not on the level yet from the return of his injury in the first place. And then I think it's logical. In the same way that Wellens hasn't been able to show if he's on the level yet since his crash at RVV either. He rode Slovenia, but was kind of invisible there. In Polonia, I haven't overly seen him yet in the last few days. So I reckon that injuries are part of the reason that those two riders are not included in this team. But I would say, as a Belgian, I am heavily invested in how solid the team is that we are sending. And I think this is probably one of the best teams that could have been selected for this race.
Yeah, and there's also politics involved. So, I mean, Van Hooydonk and Benoit, probably they earn it on merit, I would say, given their results in Kuurne, Brussels, Kuurne, and Van Aert has to go. But then, Remco needs a quick stepper. So they have to take a quick stepper. Is Yves Lampaert better than Arnaud Delis? No. But
he'll domestique 100%.
Yeah, as a domestique, as a role, as a quick step teammate to, because you've got all the factions, he's got to go. Alex, I would have maybe liked to see Alex Segart doing this race, because I think Segart's really, really good. He was his second at Belgian national champs.
Yes, he's focusing, he's trying to win the U23 ITT championships, and he's a favorite for it.
Okay, fair enough. He probably will win that. But, yeah. Oh, I thought he said he was skipping it because it was unfair on the other guys.
Possibly. I don't remember.
Anyway, Campenaerts is one. Benji is he
I don't think he said that, by the way. I think that was someone else.
Oh, okay, someone else. Campenaerts, what's his role? Is he just going to ride the front? Is he going to be an attacker? Is he going to join groups? What's his role here?
I think if you look at this team, you've got an entire team with different situations ahead of you. Like, to look at what Campenaerts can do, I feel like we need to look at what the leaders can do as well. And I think Evenepoel is the logical early attack option. He's the one that will slip into moves with 60, 50, maybe even earlier than that kilometers to go. And we'll try and benefit from situations like that and hope he can drop everybody on the punchy circuit that comes afterwards, after he's gone with a group of people. Meanwhile, I think Van Aert and Philipsen, logically you would think, Philipsen is there for a bunch sprint, while Van Aert is an attacker that is more in a defensive role than Evenepoel, but is still an attacking option to go into groups that maybe try and follow the Evenepoel move. He tries to counter an attack by a Van der Poel, for example, that kind of stuff. But I also personally think that the circuit is too hard to be a bunch sprint, to the point that I wouldn't leave Philipsen just waiting in the peloton for a bunch sprint. I would have him do the same role as Van Aert. Counter moves of favorites. If Evenepoel is up the road or he's already been caught, regardless of that, he needs to be kind of doing what Van Aert is doing. Otherwise, he will most likely not end up in a position where he's competitive to win the race in the first place, because I think the race will be won ahead of the peloton and not in the peloton. And that's one thing. And then if we take a look at the domestiques, I'll throw it back to you in a second. Campenaerts, for example, I think that's just in function of the other riders. So Campenaerts could slip in a move with Evenepoel, be a domestique in that group for a bit, or he can slip in a move with Van Aert a bit later, something like that. I think it's more that way that I think these riders will work.
Yeah, I think so. And I definitely don't think in a sprint they're going to go for Van Aert. So it's clear that he has to be an attacker. Now, what phase of the race can he do that? So Philipsen, if it did come down to a group of 10, Philipsen was there, he'd have to be their man, in my opinion. But to be honest, like you look at Van Hooijdonk and Benoot, they can also get into groups and cause a lot of problems. Like look at Kerner, look at Omloop het Nieuwsblad. Like I think they should really be using the Jumbo strategy with Kampenaerts, Evenepoel, Van Aert, Van Hooijdonk, Benoot, and Philipsen maybe a little bit more defensive early.
I agree with your take on Van Hooijdonk and Benoot, but I also feel like if Benoot is in a group with 10 other riders, I have zero confidence he can beat those 10 other riders if he's alone in that group. So,
you got like the Jumbo strategy of overloading numbers.
Yeah, I think so as well. Now, question for you. There's a group of 10, 15 going to the line. Van Aert and Philipsen are both in the group. Will Van Aert control and lead out Philipsen in a group of 15 to the line?
I don't know, actually. I mean, if he's not going to do it, then he should at least attack to put Philipsen in a seat. So that's, if you want to have your cake and eat it too, the worst thing to do is just to sit there and someone attacks like a Van der Poel. And that's the thing, I'm thinking, who's the big competitor to Belgium here as well? Who have you got to react to? And that's Van der Poel. It's Van der Poel. It's the big contender. He's not on this circuit. I know Van der Poel, he looked like shit in the Tour, let's be honest. He was coughing. He did. He didn't look good. I mean, apart from some of the second week mountainous stages, but in the stages where I thought he'd be good, he was bad. And he looked sick. So I don't know what his prep is like, but to me, he's the big danger for them, because this guy, Alaphilippe, has not been on the level of 21 Leuven, where he on a little bump stepped off everybody. Van der Poel's that guy where he could get to this last lap, see a 400 meter 5% climb, and just nuke you. And if you're tired, you see you later. Like, it doesn't matter if you've got two guys. It's too late. He can solo to the finish. I think Belgium have to avoid that, and that's the big danger. And you have to, that's why you have to use numbers on him early.
Would you argue the way to counter the Netherlands is also the way that Van Baarle has won in the past? For example, Van Baarle is going to be the silent assassin that tries to slip in groups, but Evenepoel will do the same. So if you've got Evenepoel and Van Baarle in a group, are you not comfortable with that as Belgium, knowing that his sprint of Evenepoel has increased so significantly over the last 2 years, to the point that I now believe he can beat Van Baarle, which I wouldn't have had in my mind 2 years ago in a sprint, because Van Baarle has that sneaky Wout Poels sprint, you know?
I think both would be happy with it, actually, because Netherlands would be guaranteed a decent result, and maybe Van der Poel's would be isolated otherwise. So I think, both would be happy with it. Now that we're mentioning their team, the Netherlands, we may as well run through it. Van der Poel, Dan Hooler as a domestique with Jan Maas. Riesebeek is probably that middle phase with Van Dijk, although Luke said they should ride for Dan Hooler. Van Baarle, who won Omloop het Nieuwsblad anticipating, and Paris-Roubaix in the same fashion. And where'd he come in Leuven? Second.
Fourth?
He came second in Leuven. This guy is serious on these sort of parkour and long races. Enkorn's been very, very good. And Olav Koy is their Philipsen role to me. It's actually a very similarly constructed team to Belgium. You have Van der Poel as Van Aert, who can win a sprint of 6, who can attack. You have Van Baarle as Evenepoel. I know he's not Evenepoel, but, in that role as an anticipator. And you have Koy, who, if you watch the Dutch National Championships, was fucking good. You have Koy, as the sprinter behind. So it's a really good team. Van der Poel, as I said, question marks over his shape, but I think Van Baarle, they have to let him have his freedom, Benji, to do his thing. Otherwise, they'll just get exposed by Belgium anticipating.
I think so as well. The thing with Van Baarle is, what were the odds that were given to him by the bookmakers again? I think he's once again being underrated for 41. These World Championships. Because to me, he's like odd 15 or something like that. Because I generally believe that if a group is ahead, with Evenepoel and Van Baarle, those are the two likely candidates to win from that group. And I agree that this is a very similarly constructed team, in the same way that, for example, Dan Hooler could be doing the work that a Kampenaerts is doing and so forth. And we got Riesebeek as the teammate for Van der Poel in this team as well. So you've got that similar vibes across those two teams. And how can you get ahead of? I don't know, if you're Netherlands, you're kind of hoping that you get the scenario that you mentioned earlier, that Van der Poel comes to the last lap and has that punch right away on a 400 meter, 200 meter, whatever, 5% segment, just snipe it, 30 seconds, full power. Same thing he did on the steep section at the end of Strade in 2020?
21.
Fuck. Close enough. Probably was 21. But that punch was so significant that almost nobody can follow that. And definitely at the end of a 270-kilometer race. So that's the spot you want to go for if you're that team as well. But we've spoken about Belgium and Netherlands now. I feel like there's a team that is stacked but underrated, and that's Denmark for me. Because, like, if you take a look at Denmark, you've got the Asgrens of the world, which Asgren seems to me like the candidate that they would put in groups like with Van Baalen and Evenepoel, but also a certain Kragh Andersen can do that role. And Mes Pedersen is a candidate to win this race, especially if it rains.
Yeah.
So write him down in your little black book.
Well, remember Yorkshire.
He's probably already in there.
He already won in the UK in wet conditions. And, you know, as Luke pointed out before the show, who was looking good and then collapsed, Van der Poel in the wet. Because, I think he overextended, but, like, we know that Pedersen in these conditions is good.
But my question is the following. If Evenepoel and Van Baalen go in a group ahead, and Asgreen responds to it, I am 100% certain that Lefevre will have made sure that Asgreen rides for Remco.
No way.
He does it all the fucking time. Schmidt last year was riding for Remco. Seneschal has ridden for Remco in World Championships.
Yeah, but Seneschal is not Asgreen.
I don't know. I feel like sometimes it's underrated how much team managers are trying to influence. He won't chase him. That's true, but I don't know.
Yeah, in a group of three, he will not. With Van Baalen, for sure, Asgreen will not just lead out Remco. That would be insane. They would look so stupid if they just lost the sprint to Van Baalen.
Wait, did we not see a scenario like that in the European Championships that
Viviani with Viviani and Lampard? He just towed him, yeah. That's different, though. That was a 2-up, right?
I don't remember.
Maybe Ackerman was there. I can't remember. But
Ackerman was there.
Anyway, you're right. Like, these sort of things do make a difference. But yeah, that's a strong team. Schelmers, Asgreen, Kragh Andersen, all in good shape. Kort in mesh shape. Honoré, I feel like I haven't seen that guy for a long time. Bjerg is the engine. Merku's a domestique early on. And yeah, Pedersen's the figurehead. I'll go to the France team now before I sort of say my overall piece. But yeah, Alaphilippe, 2 years ago, he'd be my favorite for this, even though 2 years ago I would have underrated him because I was a hater. But he should have been the favorite for this. But he hasn't looked like that guy. Cavagna in the wet on a technical course will struggle. Coquard, Cosnefroy, I don't know, draw a, who knows, lucky guess what shape Cosnefroy is in. Could be great. Laporte, Legac, Madouas, Seneschal. I think Laporte in his Tour de France condition is clearly their leader.
Yeah.
The odds reflect that. Madouas won French NCs on a hard attritional course. I don't know what Gregoire has to do to get picked, the poor bastard, but yeah, I guess Legac is... Anyway, how many FDJs are in here?
Madouas is in here?
1, 2, Madouas and Legac.
Legac, is he still?
Yeah, he's on FDJ.
He's still.
Yeah, they took him instead of Demar.
You're right.
Gregoire would be sick on this course. But,
yeah, he would be.
Especially as an attacking option with Laporte behind, because Benoit you cannot trust. But yeah, I don't see them, Benji, making the race like they used to in Imola and in Leuven.
I think so as well. I don't see that either. Then again, I do see like a Madouas getting in a group ahead and so forth, and Laporte playing that Van Aert role for this team, and I do see that being a possibility to a close place. I think Laporte can podium this race. Like I believe he straight up can. And if it comes down to a sprint with Van Aert and so forth in a group of 10 without the likes of Philipsen, then he could even fight for the victory because he can beat Van Aert in a 1-up sprint.
Beat him in the World Champs last year.
40% of the time?
65 to 70% after this 270 after 270 Ks.
Okay. I like the take, but Belgium will be at your doorstep tonight.
Well, Laporte, he's just I'm not knocking Van Aert. Van Aert's better than Laporte in many, many ways, but I'm saying Laporte's sprint after fatigue is really good. So maybe not 70%, 50-50, but I think you're right. It could go either way, but he's clearly like, even if Philipsen is fucked and he gives him a whole lead out the whole time, Laporte can come out of his wheel theoretically. But yeah, I hope Alaphilippe shows something. I worry they will repeat the mistakes of yesteryear, which was, for the record, they got Sivakov in a group with Remco and maybe Kosnefra. Was Kosnefra in that group? They had maybe 2 riders in a group with Remco. We're represented. We're happy. Group goes around for a lap. Remco says, "See you later." Yeah. And so, listen, I think they can't risk. If they get Madouas in a group with Remco, maybe they don't have any other options. But that's the problem. I think if teams think, "Oh, we have theoretical representation," then you just get torched again. But yeah, Britain, I think, is another team that could be a candidate for that, where they have some very strong riders who are all quite similar, actually. Fred Wright, Ben Swift, Ben Turner, Samuel Watson, Connor Swift, Luke Rowe, Jake Stewart, Owen Doull. Quite similar. There's no clear sprinter. There's no clear anticipator. The best classics rider here is clearly Fred Wright, based on Tour of Flanders. But they're another team who I'll be like, they could for sure get 2 guys in a group ahead of 20 or 15 with an hour and a half left.
Yeah.
But then are they good enough to respond when Van der Poel and Evenepoel and Van Baarle go? I'm not so sure.
Probably not.
And then to win the sprint behind is also a problem because they're not as fast as Laporte, Philipsen, Van Aert, all these guys.
I think so as well. Now, onto a country that has just confirmed their leader just a few minutes ago. We've got Slovenia at the start line. And yesterday I looked at their list and I was like, who is here? Like, Mohoric is not here. Roglic is not here. Pogacar was not confirmed yet. He is now confirmed as the leader of Slovenia for the World Championships. Next to him, we've got...
as the leader. There's Jaka Primožič there.
Okay, boy. Okay. Now, next to Pogacar, we've got Skok, Pfingst, Koren, Primožič, Nova, Govakar, and Mezgec. The majority of these riders are not known names within the household of cycling, I think. I think Koren...
See, the guy that popped.
Yeah, I think he's got a doping record, if I recall correctly.
Fair enough. 36 years old.
Yeah, Govakar is pretty good.
What is this team, man?
Pogacar's leader, let's be honest.
No, I know, of course, I'm joking, but yeah. But like, they're missing 3 of their best riders.
Yeah, Mohoric should have been here.
Roglic and Mohoric. Mohoric won San Remo. He's good in long attritional races. He's good in the rain. He's smart. He gets into groups. He anticipates.
That's what you need.
How the fuck is he not in this race?
Can't believe it.
Is it politics?
I don't know. We know there's political troubles with the manager and so forth, and some leaders of the Slovenian the top riders don't necessarily agree with who's leader and so forth. But this is a mess of a team. But then again, if you're Pogacar, do you need a massive team behind you?
No,
I think
you need
the main
Mohoric.
problem is...
It makes a big difference.
I agree, because you don't have that rider to send into groups ahead. Like, Trotnik's not here either.
Yeah, but I get that. Him and Roglic on the Vuelta,
yeah,
of course, they're not going to do it. But Mohoric just won Tour of Poland stage uphill yesterday against climbers.
Yeah.
I don't understand.
Exactly, and he won a pretty classics-like Tour de France stage as well, so he should have been in this race, in my opinion. And next to Slovenia, lots of other teams with like riders that could compete and are outsiders. Or are we missing a heavy favorite somewhere if we take a look
but just
around?
On the point of Pog, like, what do you think about him deciding to do it last minute? I mean, Mezgec, I don't want to knock him too much. Mezgec was good in the Tour, and Govakar's a nice rider, but like, Skok, Finks, Koren, Primožič, they're not World Tour riders. But what do you think Pogacar's chances are? Obviously, if it rains, it helps him. But I think if the climbs were double the length, I'd like it for him. But it is still a classics parcours.
I think so as well. I think it's a classics parcours, but I still believe Pogacar is competitive on that classics parcours.
Yeah.
And my thing with Pogacar is, I think if he waits and is that Van Aert role for the team of Slovenia, then they will lose. If he goes early and he slips into groups
like
with a Van Baarle and Evenepoel, and then those countries have to decide whether they want to ride with Pogacar in a group and so forth.
They'll ride with him. for sure.
I think so. So I think that is the scenario you're looking for.
Yeah, that's a good point. I hadn't thought of that. Yeah, you're right. Like, people will ride with him. They will, because, you know, he's not Van der Poel or Van Aert or Philipsen. But yeah, they're sort of the main teams, or the bigger teams with more numbers. Let's say we'll try and speed run through some of the other. Garcia Cortina and Aaron Baru. Lascano is Spain's best chance. Frankly, that guy's a beast. Yeah, Lascano looks really good. How he didn't go on Movistar's Tour de France team is a mystery to everybody outside of Pamplona. But I'm really keen to see how he goes, or Izagirre if it's raining. Yeah, I mean, I'd like to see Adria do well, but I don't think he will. Switzerland has a lot of question marks, with Hirschi looking in okay shape at San Sebastian, but the shorter climbs I think are better for him. Schmidt, I feel like I haven't seen for a long time. Bissiger it's not good for him. And Kung, he'll need it to rain, and he'll need to... he just will lose a sprint, and I don't see him going solo, so it's tough. Wasn't
he in the group with Pedersen won the World Championship, so he can definitely be competitive by anticipating and be in there and maybe fight for a podium and so forth, but it's going to be hard for him to win. The thing is also, if you've got a group of 10 ahead, you are Kung in that group, you've got lots of solo riders in the group, no domestiques anymore, and if you do get away, because there's so many corners that every attack you do, you'll be out of sight quickly. Can that benefit a rider like Kung to the point that Van der Poel, Van Aert, and Pedersen will be looking at each other again, and nobody else will want to ride with them, and then a Kung can ride off into the sunset?
Realistically, I think there'll be other teams with multiple riders who will send their rider to chase him and attack with him. So it would have to be a race where everyone's isolated, and I don't see that as possible, and Kung still being there. So it'll be difficult for him. United States send Craddock, who's in fantastic shape at the Tour, Jorgensen as well, Paulus, Sean Quinn, that is, and then Quinn Simmons and Sheffield. Sheffield, he, I think, posted a couple of weeks ago after his Tour de Suisse crash, he was back on the bike on the trainer, so his shape's a question mark. Like, if Sheffield was coming in really good shape, he'd actually be my dark horse, along with Kwiatkowski, because I have a soft spot for the Ineos riders, but I don't know about his form. But Sheffield, he won, obviously, Brabantse Pijl. He's a really good anticipator, huge engine, and, but yeah, they got no sprinter, so this team will try to get into groups. Paulus, Jorgensen, both top 10 Flanders. They can do 270 Ks. That's not a question. Yeah. But it's the sprint that's really the problem, and it's the Kung issue as well. So I'm hoping for a good result for them, but top 5 is probably what I'm seeing at best.
Ben Healy, Derek G, those are riders that will try and get in early groups, I think, and try and benefit in that way. Germany's quite a, what can I say, interesting squad. As in, Dens was great at the Giro. Boyd was great at the Tour de France. Dens was great on this parkour in 2018 when he was in that decisive group. So those are riders that can get ahead and be in that group, but can they win from that scenario? Not in my head. So top 10 is the mag this team can get as well in my head.
Yeah, I know Zimmerman. I asked German cycling the Radsport bubble, what's up with Zimmerman not being there, because the guy was 6 in the GC group on Col de la Loze, and he just won a Dauphiné stage, and he came top 10 in Eschborn, Frankfurt. But apparently it was his decision. Some article was linked not to do the race. Now, often, yes, that can sometimes be true, and I'm not saying it's necessarily the case in this case, but sometimes a national federation can say to a rider, hey, would you like to go to World Championships? Your role will be X. Yeah. And the rider's like, actually, I'd rather go on holiday than
domestique for random rider X.
For Max Schachmann. So I'm not saying that happened here, but yeah, Ruch Hessmann, he's a nice young rider, Hessmann, but Degenkolb, Dens, Schachmann, Pollitt. Pollitt was good in the Tour. He was in really good shape, but yeah, they're just missing something, that German team, I think. Who else?
Australia.
Oh yeah, I forgot. Sweeney. Happy to see Sweeney here. Robert Stannard. I mean, he won Tour de Wallonie last year overall, which, is kind of comparable racing, but he's not been that good this year, frankly, or stepped up too much. Simon Clark, fantastic in the Tour. Durbridge, okay. Domestique. Plapp's been Yeah, Plap's been struggling since he had crashed badly in Tour de Hungary, and I think that's kind of been he's struggled after that, and so he's trying to get his season back on track. I don't know how. I think he'll be focusing on the TT, but yeah, the main leaders are Matthews, Groves, Ewan. Obviously, I see a disaster incoming because who is the leader? Who is the best?
Ewan is not.
Yeah, obviously not.
Why is he here in the first place?
Contract. Try get a good deal for next year.
I don't see him being competitive at all, and I think he's just filling a spot of someone that can do better at this race. And I think Clark is probably the rider that I expect to have the best result at the end of the day.
I think Groves will be good.
Okay.
Because he won Volta Limburg, and as I said before, that's one of Netherlands' biggest races, and he destroyed Enkhorn and Van Hils there, man. He destroyed them on a hilly course. Like, it was a real domination. So I think Groves is actually the best option. The problem is, like, Matthews, like, what happens in World Championships, right?
Yeah.
A split happens because teams are aggressive. Evenepoel anticipates. Matthews doesn't react. He'll look at a teammate and say, you close it. And it's like, you can't do that. And then, because your teammate won't close Remco Evenepoel. So I just see, chemistry problems in the final for this team. Maybe Clark and Sweeney will have to have their work cut out closing it back. But yeah, I think Groves is a good result. I mean, Matthews as well. Like, but he come last year and he came third last year. He is good in these hilly races, but seeing him winning will be difficult. But yeah, Matthews can't be counted out as a good rider on this parkour either. But
when it comes to Binyam, that's a difficult one here because he's just not been on the level at this point. And I don't trust him if it rains either. And when it comes to positioning for being there when he needs to be slipping in a group, then I'm also kind of like, I don't see it. So if he's there, he needs to anticipate. Otherwise, he's going to get fucked in the race. And I'd prefer to see him at the front of the race, but it's going to be difficult to create that situation. And I think we've said a lot about a lot of countries. Almeida's here 2 days after Poland. Interesting thing. Norway's got the likes of Christoph and so forth, but I think the race will be too aggressive for that scenario. So it's maybe going to be a tiller up in the group for Norway, stuff like that. I'm sad Miguel Angel Lopez is not here despite him being suspended for 1 day. It would have been hilarious.
Dude. And Matt, he got suspended because he wanted to go and do a flat 270k classics race in the rain in Glasgow. Bro, should have stayed at home.
It's torture itself.
You push the button and you got your answer. I'd like to see how Lawrence Pithy goes in the rain. Kiwis with Corbin Strong. Those two with James Oram and Bevan and George Ben. I'd like to see how those two young guys, Strong and Pithy, go. Narvaez actually low-key good on this sort of circuit, but when you're isolated, it's really, really tough for Ecuador. Hungary haven't announced yet. I don't know if Valter's, is he being allowed to do this because he's doing the Vuelta preparation, but, Valter could get a good result.
I don't see it.
Probably not.
I think it's too difficult to do that as a solo rider as well in the first place. Matthias Vacek is a name that I'm also intrigued by what he can do here, but I'm also not on the page where I believe he can be competitive in a full way either. So Kwiatkowski, for example, I expect to be here. He was good at the Tour, but I kind of feel like he might miss the decisive move as well because once again, so isolated. And I think we've gone through most of the list here, but are there specific outsiders that you mentioned or didn't mention that you're like, I expect this rider to fight for a top 5 and he's not on the top 5 favorites list, for example?
Probably Lascano, I would say. Because he's doing really well in races that don't even suit him. Yeah. Like, he came 4th when he crashed in Prueba Villafranca, which is literally a puncheur's race. Like, it has a 3K 7% climb, and he's against Hirschi, Healy, Ayuso. And, like, the guy came 2nd in Dwars Tour. So I really think, how long is Dwars Tour? 180Ks. How is that a fucking World Tour race? Yeah, like, I think Lascano is a really, really big chance for a top result here. And for he's Spain's best. Like, Garcia Cortina, better ride for him if it comes up, I think. Oh, I mean, that seems okay. But yeah, I like him. Who else do I like?
Hirschi? Are you back on the train?
No. Only for Dop Pro races. I mentioned somebody else, but I've forgotten that I liked. Anyway, who's your dark horses? Mine's Lascano.
Yours is Lascano. I actually believe that that's a very big name, and I kind of believe he can do that. But I'm also going to look at the same race you looked at. You looked at Prueba Villafranca, for example, and I'm believing that Ben Healy could be a good call for this as well.
True,
because he's also not at the top of the list yet, but he was also really competitive there. Just wasn't good enough to follow Lascano on the last two pieces of hills in that terrain. But I think if it rains, it might help him even. And then he's good solo as well, which I think will matter, because I think the scenario in which he can win is solo. So I don't think he will win, but I actually see him being competitive in a top 10 position, being ahead in a group as well, being pushed ahead, thrown ahead, and so forth. So I think he's my dark horse for this race. And if we would have had the Mauro Schmid we saw at the end of last year before this race, then I would have said Mauro Schmid as well, but haven't seen it recently. So I can't tell you. He top 10 to Wallonia, I think, but that doesn't shout to me that you're going to top 10 the World Championships easily either. Skjelmo also could be a rider where, despite it not being the most mountainous parkour or the most hilly parkour, I see him getting a top 10 by being in a group ahead.
Yeah, wasn't he in the group with Schmid last year?
I don't know. Yeah, I think he was actually.
He was. I'm pretty sure. Italy haven't announced their team, but Trentin will be leading their team, I dare say. I don't know who else will be there. Maybe
Baroncini, maybe?
Baroncini, Lorenzo Rota would be my guesses. But yeah, Trentin will be trying to get maybe a top 5, top 10 result, I dare say. I mean, he was pretty good in the Tour. Milano's my other dark horse. I really like Milano. Yeah, Milano is good. He is very fast. And also, I don't know what his shape is like. I think terrible. So that's a problem. But did he got hit by a car, right?
I don't fucking know, man.
I think he got hit by a car.
He's been injured so many times, I feel like.
Nah, that was, you're conflating it with Hodge. Maybe.
No, probably.
He won Grand Prix de Denain. He came 7th in Bredena Coxhead Classic and 9th in Brugge de Panne, and then he had a major problem after that. So he would have been, it's a shame. But I think Milano typically would have been very, very good on this course, actually. Or Koi. Koi also, I think, is quite fast and good in an attritional race. But yeah, how do you see it playing out, Benji? Because I've said all this, but I have a very clear idea of how this race is going to play out.
Very clear. Ooh, I think there's many scenarios that can happen, but I believe there's going to be initial breakaway. Nothing dangerous in that. There's going to be people trying to bridge towards that breakaway in the first few laps that we actually enter into Glasgow. And I think then at a certain point, the group will create with the likes of an Evenepoel, with the likes of a Van Baarle, with those type of riders. And that group, whether that makes it or not, I think if a group goes with 50 kilometers to go and it's got 10 riders with the majority of the big countries, I think it takes a victory.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's going to be similar to last year. As you said, break brought back, or break is basically caught by some early anticipation moves. Split goes. Denmark, France, Britain, they say Netherlands were represented. And then Remco's probably in there with numbers. Yeah. Belgium start playing numbers, and then Remco goes in one of the corners, after one of the corners, attacks, and that's it. And I think Remco wins by over a minute again, actually.
Okay.
I really think that's the problem for Philipsen, because he's such a danger. It creates a situation where if groups get ahead that don't have him in or Van Aert in it, and there's only Remco in there, France or Britain will be like, oh, well, at least Jasper Philipsen's not here.
Yeah.
And then Remco just next lap hits you with an attack, and he's so aero on the flat. Once he has a gap, you can't bring it back unless you kill your own race. So you have there, Fred Wright looks at Benoit Cosnefroy, looks at Skjelmoser, looks at Garcia Cortina, looks at Enkhorn or Riesebeek. Yeah. And they're like, well, if I chase him right now, my race is over.
And next to that, you also got to add into that, for example, the reason that Belgium can still get away with that is because Evenepoel isn't seen as that guy like Van Aert with a major sprint yet. Despite him having a decent sprint now, that can probably beat half the group that he's in. Well, people don't see him that way yet. It's like Van Baarle. People still will ride with him, which is kind of shocking with me. Would you say, if you're a different team and you see a group with Evenepoel up the road and you've got a rider in it, Netherlands with Van Baarle is probably going to be happy with that. But any other team that is in that group will will they be happy with riding with them? And like, if you're Skjelmos,
it has to be someone
group,
like Asgreen. It has to be someone on Asgreen level.
Yeah, because otherwise you're riding someone else to the World Championships victory, like last year, for example, where what Franz were doing there, batshit crazy in that group. Like, stuff like that should not be happening. Just because you got your guy in that group doesn't mean you shouldn't ignore that Evenepoel is in there as well.
Yeah, but say Paulus is with Van Baarle and Remco. Or Jorgensen is with Remco.
America's
going
to be happy with that.
Podium at World Champs, man. You can lock it up. The alternative is getting smoked in the sprint behind. Yeah,
Paulus is a good dark horse.
Remember in Leuven? He was fucking strong in Leuven. Okay, he maybe raced too aggressively, but he was unbelievably strong in Leuven.
For Sebastian as well. Yeah.
Like, and San Sebastian, like, to me, Paulus is a classics rider.
Yeah.
I know that he's a classic. He is best at classics because in the Tour, everyone's like, he's in the break now. We're in the Alps. We're in his terrain. I was like, no. His terrain was stage 19. That's where I think Paulus is best. And, you know,
he's like Van Baarle?
Yeah. And he's a guy that, to your point, Healy, Ireland, they'll take a podium. America will take a podium. And because you're making that your worst case. So you now have a lot of strong riders who will work.
If you are Wout van Aert, and you know that is likely the case, I would consider ignoring team orders and doing an Evenepoel move myself.
I mean, why wouldn't team orders be for him to do that himself?
I think Evenepoel is the first man to make that move, and then Wout van Aert is a later phase man to make moves like that.
Van Aert should be going 1-2 with Evenepoel and Van Hooijdonk.
I think they might not ride with Van Aert as much as they would do with Remco Evenepoel.
Probably not, and that's because, like, okay, Evenepoel's sprint is improved, but realistically, it's not as good as Van Aert's sprint. Because, like, Trentin, right? Trentin can beat and would beat Evenepoel in a sprint. And so, you know, him or Asgreen or those guys, even Skjelmos, they can beat Remco in a sprint. When they look at Van Aert, they're like, oh, no, I don't think I can. So, but still, maybe they would still work with him, or Lazcano, you know, Bilbao, look at how he worked with Remco, and they had a 3-minute or a minute gap on Vlasov behind. So yeah, I think that's how it plays out. But yeah, Van Aert, I think he has to anticipate. He has to anticipate the anticipation of Remco, because the race could be over, and then he can't chase him behind. So, yeah.
I agree.
What if Remco goes with Trentin?
Yeah.
He's in a group with Trentin, Laporte, and Van Baarle. Remco shouldn't ride, man.
I think he'll drop Trentin. I think it's Laporte and Evenepoel then.
And Van Baarle
he can beat.
He shouldn't ride in that group. That would be insane. That would be, if he's in a group, he has Philipsen and Van Aert behind.
Yeah.
Hopefully there's a disaster class. I'd love to see it. Do you reckon, what do you reckon the chances there's, because like Belgium are the heavy favourites. They have the best bunch sprinter in the world and classic sprinter in Jasper Philipsen. They have arguably the best all-round rider, Wout van Aert in the world. It's Pogacar. But, you know, they have Van Aert, who's a unique rider.
Mm-hmm.
And they have the best long-range attacker in the world, Remco Evenepoel. They have to win. They have to win.
Yeah. They can't lose. As in, like,
they had two guys
race to lose.
Benoot and Van Hooijdonk made a mockery of Kerner themselves this year against other classics riders, and they're the domestiques.
Yeah.
They have to win. So if they don't, I can't wait.
I'm also like, Pedersen we saw anticipate early in races this year in the classics, I feel like. So
90Ks.
What if he responds to Remco and is also in that group?
Because then Remco can't work.
Remco can't work with Mats Pedersen, and that neutralizes the entire move. So Remco would have to try again, or Van Aert would have to try afterwards. And that's the interesting part, because like, I feel like a lot of other teams will respond to Remco with one of their secondary outsiders in their team. Like in Asgreen with a certain Cor Andersen. But the true way to neutralize Remco is to put your leader in there.
For sure. I mean, you have to treat him like that. But the problem is then, if Van Aert then anticipates, you can't respond to everything. And so Yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting race. I think. Yeah, and add Pogacar to the mix. Remco shouldn't work with Pogacar in the final. Like, he shouldn't work with him. So
you say Remco wins, right?
But yeah, he wins because Belgium roll attacks and he wins by a minute.
Okay.
If it's less than a minute, it doesn't count.
I actually don't know who's going to win because I feel like Remco is also my favorite because he wins in the majority of scenarios I have in my head with the amount of faith I have in an early group making it to the line. But I don't want to pick the same rider you have. So I'm kind of like desperately searching for a vessel to hold on to right now. And
go Asgreen. I reckon Asgreen's good on it. I think Asgreen's going to be nasty on this parkour.
Should I?
I can change to Asgreen if you want.
Fuck it, I changed to Mats Pedersen.
Okay, yeah. Denmark's a Danish leader, I think, is a good choice. They're all flying. Yeah. Why isn't Jonas Vingegaard here? Cowardly.
My dude, get out of here.
Cowardly. Come on.
He'd go dropped on Crow Road anyway with those mini welts he does on climbs.
Imagine. He's actually quite good at technical parkour.
We saw him at the time trial.
In the rain, yeah. If he's allowed to do it on the TT bike. But yeah. Okay, that's our World Championships road race. Men's preview. We'll have the time trial preview later, maybe start of next week or on Saturday. And then the women's preview middle of next week. But yeah, we've got this up nice and early. Hope you enjoyed it and keep you entertained. We will go on holiday now for a few days. But yeah, hope you enjoy the start of the World Championships in Glasgow and starting in Edinburgh. And we can't wait to watch it on Sunday. But until then, ciao.